Hey, welcome to the Press Box Chronicles with Jeff Pearlman. Hey, welcome to the Press Box Chronicles with Jeff Pearlman, the show where a cranky middle-aged sports writer, that is me, who has seen it all, takes you behind the scenes and into the stories. I'm your host, Jeff Pearlman. And today, we're going to dive into one of my favorite characters I've ever written about, like ever. It is former Dallas Cowboy wide receiver Michael Irvin, who might be the craziest, weirdest, coolest, most wild, most influential, most important football player from a team standpoint I've ever written about. So let's take a minute here and dig into the great Michael Irvin. So it's August 24th, 2007, and I am a sports writer working on a book that will wind up becoming this book, Boys Will Be Boys. And I just want to say, this is the worst cover in the history of cover. It looks like clip art. I've said this before. It's mortifyingly bad, but that's okay. I'm working on this book about the 90s Dallas Cowboys. And one of the cool things about being a journalist is you get to travel and you get to see things and you get to experience things. And you also get to do things that are, on occasion, slightly unethical might be the right word here, or sneaky or underhanded. And it's August 4th, 2007, and Michael Irvin is getting inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio. And I am there, and I brought along a friend of mine, a longtime veteran journalist named Michael J. Lewis, not Moneyball Michael Lewis. And we go to Canton because I really need to get Michael Irvin. I've interviewed almost all the big people from the 90s Dallas Cowboys, but I have not gotten Michael Irvin. And I know there's going to be press availability at the Hall of Fame. So I follow the media around and I get Michael Irvin here. I ask a few questions here. I ask him a few questions there. He doesn't know who I am. And I stay for his speech. And he has this amazing Hall of Fame speech. And when I find out, I'd never covered a Hall of Fame induction ceremony before, is when it comes to pro football, afterwards, all the inductees have their own private parties on private tents, in private tents, on the grounds of the Hall of Fame. And I said to my friend, Michael J. Lewis, we need to go find Michael Irvin's party. And he's like, yeah, we're not invited. And I was like, I don't give a shit. We need to find his party. So we're walking around the grounds and somehow or another, we figure out that this is the tent with Michael Irvin's party. But it is 1,000,000% a closed affair. You can't just show up and walk into Michael Irvin's Hall of Fame party. So we're walking around and we notice everyone has a wristbands and, stamps, and it's high security. But there's this one spot in the tent where nobody is standing by. And I kind of look to my left and I look to my right and I raise the tent and Mike Lewis goes under and I go under. And all of a sudden we're in Michael Irvin's Hall of Fame party. And everyone is there. Name a Cowboy from the 1990s, and they're there. There's Jerry Jones. There's Barry Switzer. There's Troy Aikman. There's Emmitt Smith. There's, whoever, Clayton Holmes and Kevin Smith. It's like a who's who of 90s Dallas Cowboys and me. And I noticed security walking around, and I'm always staying away from security. And the Pointer Sisters are playing. The Pointer Sisters are actually playing. And I'm at this event and I'm there for about an hour and I'm taking notes and I'm talking to people saying, kind of keep it on the DL, but this is what I'm doing. And they're like, oh, that's kind of funny. And there's a moment toward the end of the night, I'm still there, where the Pointer Sisters are playing one of their slow songs. I don't remember which. And Michael Irvin and his wife, Sandy, are slow dancing by themselves. And it's this really tight, affectionate, emotional, 0% sexual, 100% just love dance between Michael Irvin and this wife who he truly, in the course of his playing career, put through the absolute depths of fucking hell. And I found it to be the most beautiful scene, one of the most beautiful scenes I've ever witnessed in sports. And I ended up closing my book with that. And I loved it so much because it spoke to so much of an athlete's evolution and who they were. And it also spoke to a moment that happened a bunch of years earlier that was so crazy, and the ability of Michael Irvin to get past it, to get past what has become known as the scissors to the neck incident, continues to blow my mind. So the Dallas Cowboys drafted Michael Irvin with the 11th pick in the 1988 draft. They took him out of Miami. He was flamboyant and brash and physical and just a great, great wide receiver, like a great wide receiver. I actually think in many ways Michael Irvin is underrated because he's had a media career, because he got in a lot of trouble, because he's loud and he can be obnoxious and bombastic. Michael Irvin was a great wide receiver. He had really good speed. He had as good hands as you're ever going to see. He blocked his ass off. He played hard. Michael Irvin wasn't just good. He was great. I'm not saying he was Jerry Rice, but if Jerry Rice is here, he's not that far behind him. He was just a fabulous wide receiver. But in the course of his time with the Cowboys, which included 3 Super Bowl championships, which included a bond with Troy Aikman and a bond with Emmitt Smith, unlike any trio we've probably seen in football history, Michael Irvin had a propensity to get in trouble. He liked to drink. He liked cocaine. He liked the ladies, even though he was married. He liked the ladies who weren't Mrs. Irvin. And you would see him out and you would see him about and you would read about his antics. And on March 4th, 1996, one day before Michael Irvin's 30th birthday, Mike Bailey, the manager of the Residence Inn in Irving, Texas, calls the local police department. And his exact line was, "We have 2 individuals who keep checking into our hotel. And the better word is, well, they're prostitutes. They've been running the rooms and we have to clean up after them. And we've been finding cocaine and crack and marijuana and now they're back." And the police say, "We're on our way." And the police show up at the Residence Inn in Irving, Texas, and they knock on the door at room 624 at 11:55 p.m. And a woman named Angela Beck answers. She's 22 years old. She's a model. I hope you see the quote. She's a model. And she's a dancer at the Men's Club of Dallas. I've been there once for a story. I swear it was for a story. They have a great buffet. It was at the Men's Club of Dallas. And another dancer named Jasmine Nabwangu, also, she was 21 years old, also there, answered the door. And the police come in. And there are also 2 men there. And one is a Dallas Cowboy tight end named Alfredo Roberts. And the other is Michael Irvin. And Michael Irvin, when they walk in, is wearing no shirt and baggy blue jeans. And he says to one of the cops, "Hey, can I tell you who I am?" Which is like the worst opening line to a police officer ever. And the cop goes, "We know who you are." And in this room, with the Men's Club dancers, with Alfredo Roberts, with a shirtless, "Do you know who I am, Michael Irvin?" are 10 grams of cocaine, some weed, and 2 vibrators. And Michael Irvin winds up being fined $10,000 and he's placed on 4 years probation. And he's suspended for the first 4 games of the 1996 season. And it's important to remember 4 years probation, right? That is a number that is important here. 4 years probation. Because when you violate probation, you tend to wind up going to jail or prison. It's not a good thing. You do not want to violate probation. I tell that story because I want to take you 2 years into the future. It is now July 29th, 1998, and we are on the campus of Midwestern State University in Wichita Falls, Texas. And if you've never been to Wichita Falls, Texas, you are missing nothing. Do not go to Wichita Falls, Texas. No offense. And this is where the Dallas Cowboys at the time are holding their training camp. And you know, it's funny. I was thinking about this. I grew up, again, in a very small podunk town. And my class had 2 black kids in the class. And I remember my friend, John Powell, always complaining that you couldn't get a decent haircut in Mahopac, New York, if you were black, because there were no black barbers in Mahopac, New York. I didn't know as a kid how big of a pain this is, but it's awful. And you have to drive miles away, or you go to the city, or you go to White Plains to get a decent haircut. Well, the Dallas Cowboys were aware that in Wichita Falls, Texas, there are not a whole bunch of black barbers. So every week they would bring in this guy, Vinny. And Vinny was a black man at a black barber, and he would drive 2.5 hours to Wichita Falls, Texas to cut the player's hair. And he would set up a chair, in a dorm room. And one by one, the Cowboys would get their haircut by Vinny. The black Cowboy players would get their haircut by Vinny. So again, July 29th, 1998, afternoonish, there's a defensive back named Charlie Williams. He sits down, trim, shave, sides, cut. The second guy to enter the barber seat was an offensive lineman named Everett McIver. And Everett McIver was a guy, just kind of a journeyman. Played for the Chargers, played for the Dolphins, played a little bit for the Jets. Kind of a nobody out of Elizabeth City State. That's where he played college ball. And Everett McIver sits in the chair. And he sits back in the barber chair, as you would do. And if I had hair, I would sit back in a barber chair, right? And Vinny puts a thing around you, and he says, how do you want it? And blah, blah, blah. Well, McIver's in the chair, and Michael Irvin goes, seniority. And Everett McIver's, and Irvin's like, fucking seniority. And Everett McIver's like, are you talking to me? Michael Irvin says, get the fuck out of the chair. Everett McIver is not a rookie. Like, this isn't how you treat a non-rookie, right? Everett McIver is not a rookie. And a bunch of the other offensive linemen are in the room. And one of them goes, yo, E, do not get out of that fucking chair. And Michael Irvin's like, get the fuck out of the chair. It's my turn. Everett McIver's like, I'm not getting out of this fucking chair. And Irvin's like, get the fuck out of the chair. And Everett McIver, who's, big guy, 300 pounds, stands up, pushes Michael Irvin. And Michael Irvin's like, did this motherfucker just push me? And now everyone's egging on everyone, right? He fucking just pushed you. And the offensive linemen are like, fucking fuck you, Mike. And McIver's like all, buffed up and everything. He's not backing down. And Kevin Smith, a defensive back with the Cowboys, told me, he's like, this is not good. Michael Irvin, pushed, humiliated, high on life, always at a 103 when the max level is 100, grabs a pair of barber scissors and does this with his right hand and pulls back and slashes Everett McIver's neck. And Everett McIver falls and blood is fucking everywhere. Blood is everywhere. And Everett McIver is on the ground with blood, and players run out and they're calling for trainers to come in. And Michael Irvin is stunned that he did this. You know that moment when you do something because of adrenaline, someone pisses you off, someone cuts you in traffic. Traffic is the best example. You're driving, you're a normal human being driving your car, and some asshole cuts in front of you, maybe has a sticker that says Twisted Sister for life, and you hate Twisted Sister, and you're like, what are you doing? And all of a sudden that was Michael Irvin in that moment. I don't know what just happened. But I just stabbed this guy and I have bloody scissors in my hand. And the trainers come in, and Everett McIver's on the ground. And the whole thing blows up into this craziness. And the reason I brought up before about the 4-year probation is because stabbing a teammate with a pair of barber scissors in the neck is a crime. And if this gets out, Michael Irvin is going to somewhere. There's no doubt about it. You will be charged with, I don't know, manslaughter, attempted murder, blah, 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 blah. I don't even know. So the Cowboys do, I wouldn't say the ethical thing, but the wise thing. And they basically pay Everett McIver a decent amount of money not to say anything. Make sure nobody in the team says anything. And nobody ever finds out about scissors to the neck until, and this is maybe good journalism, whatever, I'm working on this book. And different guys are saying to me, you don't know about the scissors, do you? And I'd be like, well, what do you know about the scissors? Oh man, it was crazy. And before long, people were telling me the story about the scissors to the neck. I call Michael Irvin, no comment on it. McIver wouldn't comment on it, but I have all the sourcing on it. And I remember maybe my greatest moment as a journalist, truly my greatest moment as a journalist. One of them is the Cowboys had a safety named Darren Woodson. Great guy. Should be in the Hall of Fame. And my book comes out. And I get a call one day from Darren. And he's like, I read your book. And I'm like, oh, cool. And he's like, I have to ask, how did you find out about the scissors? How did you know about that? I was like, well, he goes, I honestly thought that would never get out. That is crazy. You knew that. And that to me as a journalist is such an insane compliment. And it's interesting because it didn't ruin Michael Irvin's career. He played a couple more seasons. He got hurt. He retired. But within the Cowboys circles, it definitely did damage to his reputation. Because what kind of person stabs a teammate with a pair of scissors to the neck? Like, who does that? And I don't feel like Michael Irvin's rep ever really recovered until he started to make amends. So it is October 15th, 2001. And the Washington then Redskins are playing the Dallas Cowboys. And one of the Washington Redskins players toward the end of his career was a linebacker named Robert Jones. And Robert Jones had been drafted a decade earlier by the Cowboys out of East Carolina. And Robert Jones, when he was with the Cowboys, was one of Michael Irvin's least favorite players. Robert Jones did not party at all. He didn't cheat on his wife. He wasn't fooling around on the road. He wasn't snorting coke. He wasn't hanging out at the infamous White House. He was just a guy who enjoyed playing football and wanted to take care of his family. And Michael Irvin truly, in their days with the Cowboys, made Robert Jones' life miserable. He would mock him and berate him and belittle him. And Robert Jones, like a good number of Cowboys who didn't speak up at the time, really came to hate Michael Irvin and think of Michael Irvin in a lot of ways as a bully. So now it's October 15th, 2001. And someone with the Redskins media relations department says to Robert Jones before the game, "Hey, Michael Irvin's outside. He wants to talk to you." And Robert Jones is like, "Michael Irvin doesn't want to talk to me." And he's like, "Well, let me go check." And he's like, "No, Michael Irvin is outside and he wants to talk to you." And Robert Jones is like, "This doesn't make any sense. Like, this guy hates me and I hate him. There's no way, but all right." And Robert Jones walks outside and there's Michael Irvin. And it's not the Michael Irvin Robert Jones remembers. Michael Irvin now is retired and he's kind of quiet and he almost looks awkward and uncomfortable. And Michael Irvin reaches out and hugs Robert Jones. And he says, "Yo, I've been wanting to say this to you for a long time." He goes, "You were right and I was wrong. You were living life virtuously and I was living life dangerously. You cared about your family more than anything and I was a selfish piece of shit. And I just wanted you to know how much I admire you and how much I regret the way I treated you." And I met Robert Jones years later. We were eating at a cheesecake factory in Austin, Texas. And he got really emotional by this moment and this outpouring. And I think for Robert and for a lot of the Cowboys, Michael Irvin over the years just changed drastically. And he was still flamboyant and he still could be bombastic. And at times he rubs people the wrong way. But the guy who stabbed his teammate with the scissors to the neck, I think if you ask most Cowboys, they would say has been replaced by a much more tender, introspective, decent human man. And I think most of the Cowboys, if you ask them from that era, what gives them the most pleasure, what gives them the most satisfaction about the legacy of that team, it wouldn't be the 3 Super Bowls. It wouldn't be seeing Troy Aikman as a TV success. It wouldn't be seeing Emmitt Smith as an entrepreneur. It'd be seeing the fall and rise of the human being, Michael Irvin. That is a wrap for this episode of Press Box Chronicles with Jeff Pearlman. Please leave a comment below on what stories you'd like to hear more about, or if there's a particular sports figure who interests you, just seriously let me know. Please make sure you like and subscribe and follow me on TikTok at Jeff Pearlman Author and Bluesky at Jeff Pearlman. Thank you so much for diving behind the scenes and digging into the story. We will see you next time on Press Box Chronicles.